Good morning, YouTube. A couple of clarifications are in order regarding my last video on Bill O'Reilly and the Oregon shooter. Several people seem to be a little bit confused as to the potential religious affiliation of the Oregon shooter, and I think that was probably partially because of the way I framed the video. It was Lee Flanagan, the Virginia shooter, who was a Jehovah's Witness, and even referred to his faith in his manifesto and, in how he conducted the acts. The Oregon shooter, from the initial reports, we don't really know, although it seems that he did request that his victims relay to him their religious affiliation, and then based on their answers, he chose where to shoot them or whether or not to shoot them. And so he may have been a person of one particular faith, or he may have been an atheist. We don't really know for certain, but either way, I think some of the confusion in my video may have stemmed from the fact that I was referring to two separate incidents where Bill O'Reilly jumped the gun and used these shootings as a platform to grandstand about having faith and sort of saying that, hey, if you believe in nothing, then anything goes. That lacking faith, that being an atheist leads to these kind of horrific acts. And obviously, in the case of Lee Flanagan, he clearly jumped the gun because it turns out that he was a man of faith. No apologies or retractions by Bill O'Reilly on that one. Obviously, that's kind of important, right? Because if you're going to say that, hey, this person committed these atrocities, and it is because of his position on faith that he committed these atrocities, and it is because of people's position on faith that they commit certain things, and then it turns out you're 180 degrees wrong, you're going to have to either apologize or you're going to have to continue. You're going to have to be consistent in your position that that person's position on faith was what caused them to conduct these acts, if you get my drift. I would maintain that Bill O'Reilly jumped the gun in the case of the Oregon shooter as well, because he made his comments on the eve of the shooting itself before we even had an accurate name or an accurate age or knew really anything about the person. So, and I think it's inappropriate to make those kind of remarks. One other thing I wanted to clarify about the video, that video that I made, and also the other couple that I'd made about the Virginia shooting, was not made in an attempt to sort of make a divide here, atheist versus theist morality. I do think that there is an issue with the claim that having faith in the unseen is virtue in and of itself. But that's not to say that I think all Christians do the moral thing because of a promise of eternal reward or the threat of eternal punishment. I believe that many Christians do the moral thing for the virtue of the moral thing itself. But of course, it's incorrect to say that if you don't have faith in the unseen, that there's no reason to do the good thing. Most atheists come from the position, and I hold this position myself, that this life is a gift. And I'm very fortunate to be able to live and to be able to experience and to be able to share, and that I don't get an eternal reward for doing a good thing, that my reward is in the here and now, and that my reward is a life well lived, and that because I have empathy, I can understand and appreciate that treating other people well is a reward in and of itself, that I can hopefully help them achieve the same kind of happiness that I enjoy, and that through that empathy I can appreciate that. And if I'm being honest, not only do I feel that this is a more accurate representation of the way unbelievers live their lives and conduct themselves, but I think it's actually a more holistic approach, because when I choose how to treat other people, I don't require the pronouncements, commandments from on high from a supreme being. I get up every day, I'm introspective, I look in the mirror, and I treat people and conduct myself accordingly, with the goal in mind to live well and to treat other people with dignity and respect and that sort of thing. Speaking of treating people with dignity and respect, Matthew419 left me a comment on that video, and lest I should be guilty of misquoting him as he did me, I'm going to read you the quote, and I'm going to address Len directly. One side of the mouth says, quote unquote, Christians have a persecution complex. Then the other says, quote unquote, atheists are demonized. And I sit here shaking my head at the irony of you calling a pundit a hypocrite. Well, let's start with the last first. The pundit was a hypocrite because he jumped on Barack Obama for politicizing the event before all the facts are in. That's what he did. Then he jumped the gun, as he did in the case of Lee Flanagan, and made his pronouncements on the cause of the incident, right? Without possibly knowing. So, I think the charge of hypocrite was accurate. The other thing is, dude, if you're going to call me a hypocrite, why don't you just come out and call me a hypocrite? You don't have to couch it in flaky language, right? Also, I thought you and I were kind of past that. I thought we were beyond this kind of talk, right? We've had our differences in the past. We've kind of softened on those things. We'd been friendly, and most people don't know, but through some private Skype communication, we'd been friendly with one another. In fact, I checked some of my last Skype communication with you, and the last meaningful communication I could find was an exchange between you and I, where I had made several private videos for yourself and Tim, supporting and encouraging you during a time when you were facing some persecution from some fellow Christians. Obviously not something I really had to do. So I'm not sure if we're going back to that, if we're going back to the infighting or the fighting or whatever, you can just carry on without me, right? Because I just don't have time for it. I mean, that's part of the reason I haven't made a video in quite a while, is I just don't have time for it. And I certainly don't have time to be squabbling with you. But I have to say, your comment did take me a little bit by surprise. However, I did not say Christians have a persecution complex. If you're going to quote somebody, you should be careful, especially if you're going to come out with the barbs, you should be careful that you're quoting them accurately. Because what I said was that the right-wing media was going to make hay with this thing about him asking people what their religious beliefs were, and then if they were a Christian, I guess, shooting them in the head. That was the initial reports. That they were going to make hay on that because of, Christian persecution. I did not say Christians have a persecution complex. Projection? I'm not sure on your part. But if you watch any Fox News, any right-wing media, they do have a Christian persecution complex. Bill O'Reilly's got his annual War on Christmas. They talk about Christian persecution with regards to any instance where someone is trying to maintain the separation of church and state. This is something that's couched in law. And if someone says, hey, we need to maintain this, we can't have the government endorsing a particular religion, everybody screams Christian persecution in the right-wing media circle. So I think I was accurate in my assessment of that. You were not accurate in your quoting of me. And then you said atheists are demonized. And that was supposed to be a quote of me as well, which is not what I said. I said this is a demonization of atheists. Actually, to be honest with you, I don't particularly feel demonized in a general sense, even though we have these, these surveys that say, atheists are the least trusted group or whatever. I don't feel particularly demonized in a general sense, but this, by Bill O'Reilly specifically, was a demonization of people who do not have faith. Right? He specifically, in both cases, the Lee Flanagan and the Oregon shooter, in both cases, he specifically laid out a comment at the end of his broadcast talking about how if you don't believe in anything, then anything goes, and it's either people who lack faith or cultures that are not faith-based that commit all these atrocities. He specifically was demonizing people who lack faith. So I did not say that atheists are demonized, but this is specifically an instance where someone is demonizing atheists. And dude, I just don't get it. I don't know if you're just knee-jerk and reactionary or what, but I'm not playing the game, right? So I just wanted to clarify the record here publicly. And quite honestly, in light of the way our relationship has gone in the past, I'm going to need an apology for the way you came at me on this one, if I'm going to engage any further. And if you want to become enemies at this point, that's your prerogative. I'm not playing. For the rest of you, thanks for watching. Have a good day.